Hello, good evening, and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep. Welcome to Target Prelims 2023, a four-stage preparation cum revision program to help you ace the Civil Services Prelims 2023. What are the highlights of this program? What are the four stages of this program? Now listen to me carefully. Those attempting Prelims 2023 can be broadly categorized into two groups. Group 1, Group 2. Group 1 candidates, those who have attempted this exam before as well, this is not their first attempt. So they would know what to study, what not to study, how to study. Whether they would study or not, that's besides the point, but they will have an idea. Group 2, these are the candidates who are attempting the prelims examination for the first time and they are more nervous. They would want to know how to strategize, how to use the remaining less than 90 days for their preparation, what should be the revision strategy. So stage 1 is focused upon those aspirants who are appearing in this examination for the first time. And what are we doing for them? Number 1, every day beginning today till March 6, between 8 p.m. till 9 p.m. What we will do? We will give you a strategy subject-wise. Today we'll discuss the strategy for polity, then tomorrow current affairs, then economy, so on and so forth, science and technology, environment and ecology. The idea is that we will split these sessions into two parts. Part 1, we will give you the strategy, preparation strategy, revision strategy for individual subjects. And then the idea is also to take up questions. Shoot as many questions as you have, as many doubts as you have. And we will guarantee you, we will resolve your doubts to the best of our capability. So stage 1 is targeting, focusing upon those aspirants who are appearing in this examination for the first time. Then comes stage 2. And stage 2, which starts March 9, is exclusively available on the BYJU'S Exam Prep app. There, what are we going to discuss in stage 2? All the current affairs topics which were in the news for the last 12 to 15 months. We have identified 400 plus topics. We will identify more topics based on their relevance in March, April, and we will discuss all the current affairs topics subject-wise. Polity-based current affairs, international relations-based current affairs, economics-based current affairs, environment and ecology, science and technology. So discussing 400 plus topics which were in the news in the past 12 to 15 months. That will be the focus of stage 2. Stage 3, we will come back on our YouTube channel and we will discuss MCQs. We will practice lots and lots of MCQs so that you are well prepared to handle the prelims examination. And stage 4, we have All India Prelims Test Series, which is normally a paid program for those who have enrolled for this program. But what we are doing now, the remaining 4 tests, the last 4 tests of our All India Prelims Test Series will be available free for all. Attempt these 4 tests, you will get an All India ranking as well. So you know exactly where do you stand amongst all these aspirants who are preparing for the Civil Services examination. This entire 4-stage preparation cum revision program is free for all. You don't have to pay anything except in the form of your likes, comments, subscribe to our channel if you haven't yet, and at the same time download the BYJU'S Exam Prep app and you can access all the live lectures. The schedule is available on our app. Access those lectures where we will discuss current affairs of the past 12 to 15 months so that you have no hesitation whatsoever when you appear in the prelims examination. Is that clear? Now let's get started and look at how should you approach Indian polity, because less than 90 days are left for the prelims examination. And listen to me carefully. Polity is one of the most important subjects when it comes to the civil services examination, particularly prelims. Sometimes 10, sometimes 12, sometimes 15, sometimes 20, sometimes 22 questions have been asked from Indian polity, making this one of the most important subjects for your prelims examination. And it is also very scoring. But please listen to me carefully, despite the fact that this is my subject, but please do not only focus on polity. Focus equally on other areas of prelim syllabus as well, because you don't have to only excel in Indian polity. You have to score above a cutoff so that you are able to write the mains examination. So please do not unnecessarily focus on single subject or 2 or 3 subjects. You will have to focus on the entire syllabus of the prelims examination. You can focus more on those areas, those subjects where you are possibly weak. But then divide your time in such a manner, manage your time in such a manner that you are equally giving attention to all the areas of your syllabus. But when it comes to Indian polity, first is the static part. The second is the current affairs part. Let's first look at the current affairs part because that forms the basis. Large number of questions are asked from current affairs when it comes to the prelims examination. I don't know what your current affairs preparation strategy has been till now, whether you are making notes or not, or whether you are attending and watching our daily The Hindu newspaper analysis or not, or whether you are entirely focused on the monthly current affairs magazines. Whatever it is, please be confident. This is not the world's toughest examination. Do you know who are these candidates who clear the prelims examination, who clear the civil services examination? It's all about nerves, my dear. Those 2 hours when you're inside the examination hall, leave everything else. Just focus on your question paper. Forget about all the misery, all the agony that you might have. Just focus on this examination. And those who are able to hold their nerves, control their emotions, I guarantee you, you will clear this examination. Why? Because when you are in self-doubt, you read a particular question. Listen to me carefully. This has happened with lots and lots of aspirants. You read a particular question and then you start doubting yourself. Now, UPSC cannot ask a very simple question. There is something more I have to read in between the lines. The question is simple. The question is direct. But because you have self-doubt, you are not able to answer this question correctly. Why? Because you have self-doubt. You assume that answer is something else. If you have prepared well for this examination, there is no reason why you can't clear this exam. Have belief in yourself. And those who will have belief, those who will have self-confidence, those who are able to control and hold their nerves and emotions during that period, 2 hours of your examination, I guarantee you success. With hand on my heart. If you want, I'll give you in writing in my blood. That's number 1. Number 2, static portion of polity and the dynamic portion, which is current affairs. Whatever your current affairs preparation strategy has been, if you have made notes, revise the notes. Revise the notes every single day. So you have to devote your attention in such a manner, plan your schedule in such a manner that you're equally paying attention to current affairs. 1 hour per day on current affairs, that is more than important, more than sufficient for you to crack the prelims examination. But in that current affairs preparation plan, what you should do, if you're making notes, if you have made notes, revise. If not, focus on the monthly current affairs magazine. Sir, I haven't yet started current affairs. I'm not making notes. Don't worry. Why? Because there are enough material available on our website, or even for that matter, take any magazine of any coaching institute, any current affairs monthly magazine, revise this. Revise it thoroughly. That should be your preparation strategy for current affairs. But when it comes to the static portion, listen to me carefully. If you want examples, I'll give you enough examples. For example, the office of governor is in the news. How should you revise this topic? Listen to me carefully. Whether office of governor should continue or should it be abolished? That's the subject matter of mains examination. Forget about mains right now. Just focus on your prelims examination. Forget about mains. So what is the office of governor? Revise with me. The origin of this office is the Government of India Act 1935. Done? Who is qualified to be appointed as the governor of a state? Somebody who is the citizen of India who has completed 35 years of age. That's it. These are the only 2 qualifications mentioned in the Constitution. Can a single person be appointed as the governor of more than one state? Yes. But this is something which was not mentioned in the original Constitution. This was added to the Constitution by 7th Constitutional Amendment Act 1956. So a same individual can be appointed as the governor for more than one state as well, according to the 1956 amendment. If the question is there in the examination and one of the option is the governor appointed to a state should be a non-resident according to the constitution, you should know that this is an incorrect statement. Because yes, there are few conventions. Conventions like when you are appointing the governor to a state, the chief minister of that state is consulted. The governor to Karnataka, for example, should be a non-resident, should not be the resident of Karnataka. But this is not mentioned in the constitution. This is a convention that we have been following, an unwritten rule that we have been following. So office of governor, why is the office of governor in the news? Because what the governor is doing in Kerala, what the governor is doing in Punjab, what the governor is doing in Rajasthan or West Bengal, since the office of governor is in the news, but I have to prepare the office of governor strictly from the prelims perspective. For that, the origin of this office is Government of India Act 1935. What is the qualification? Two qualifications mentioned in the constitution. Can the same person be appointed as the governor of more than one state? Yes, according to the 7th Constitutional Amendment Act 1956. This governor, what are the discretionary powers of the governor? The discretionary powers of the governor are mentioned in the constitution. You should know that this is an incorrect statement. Because what are these discretionary powers? The constitution has not defined. But constitution has said, if there is a doubt as to what constitutes the discretionary powers of the governor, the word of the governor shall be final. Then the governor, what are the powers of the governor regarding summoning of the state legislature? The state legislative assembly, the sessions, who can summon the session of the state legislature? Governor. But does governor have a discretion in summoning the state legislature? No. Why? Because that's what Supreme Court has reiterated. There is a judgment, Nabam Rabia judgment of 2016, which clearly says that there is no discretion in the hands of the governor in summoning the sessions of the state legislature. The sessions of the state legislature shall be summoned by the governor only on the advice of the chief minister and his council of ministers. Then there is something else. In Kerala, there is a clash between the office of governor and the chief minister. On what? On the appointment of the vice chancellors of the state universities. For that, we have UGC guidelines regarding the appointment of the vice chancellor of the state universities. Read the UGC guidelines. That becomes important for your prelims examination. Not just that, there is one commission known as Punchi Commission. Punchi Commission has categorically stated in its recommendations that this practice of governor being the chancellor of the state universities, this practice should be abandoned. So which of the following commissions recommended that the governor should not remain the chancellor of the state universities? Is it Administrative Reforms Commission? Is it Sarkaria Commission? Is it Punchi Commission? None of the above. So you should know the answer to this question is the Punchi Commission. If Punchi Commission is in the news, then you have to look at what are the recommendations of the Sarkaria Commission as well. Just focus on facts and concepts when it comes to the office of governor, and you have revised the office of governor. Be done with this. Similarly, for example, we have Article 19(1)(a). What does it talk about? It talks about freedom of speech and expression. Freedom of speech and expression is in the news. Why? Because of the recent Supreme Court judgment, where the Supreme Court said that if somebody is violating or indulging in hate speech, then this individual can also be prosecuted. In a sense, you can file a case in the Supreme Court on the grounds that your freedom of speech and expression has been violated. Justice Nagaratna dissented. She gave a dissenting judgment, but ignore that judgment. Focus entirely on the prelims examination right now. And for the prelims examination, what is it that you need to know? Freedom of speech and expression, there are 8 reasonable restrictions on the basis of which your freedom of speech and expression can be restricted. You know that? But out of these 8 restrictions, Were all these 8 restrictions present in the original constitution? No. There were various or 4 reasonable restrictions added to the constitution later, after 1950, through constitutional amendments. So you might be asked in your prelims examination, which of the following reasonable restrictions on freedom of speech and expression were not part of the original constitution? So original constitution said your freedom of speech and expression can be restricted on the grounds of security of the state, on the grounds of morality or decency, on the grounds of contempt of court, on the grounds of defamation. These were the only 4 grounds mentioned in the original constitution. Then later 4 more grounds were added. And you need to know, you have to know which are these 4 grounds which were added later. Sovereignty and integrity of India was added later. Friendly relations with foreign states was added later. Public order was added later. Incitement to an offense, it was added later as a reasonable restriction on your freedom of speech and expression. That is how you have to look at the static portion. Not just this, let me give you more examples. For example, cognizable and non-cognizable offenses. You might be asked in the prelims examination, cognizable offenses are those offenses where the police needs an arrest warrant from the magistrate before you can be arrested. So you should know this is an incorrect statement, because a cognizable offense is such where the police need not have the arrest warrant from a magistrate, where the police can arrest you even without the arrest warrant. But non-cognizable offenses are those offenses where the police cannot arrest you unless and until an arrest warrant has been issued against you by the magistrate. So this difference between cognizable and non-cognizable offenses, you should know, you should have an idea. But not just that, something had happened recently. Heinous crime. What is a heinous crime? The Supreme Court has clarified. What the Supreme Court has clarified? If no minimum punishment is prescribed, or the minimum punishment is less than 7 years, that crime becomes a heinous crime. Now listen to me carefully. For example, a crime has been committed. For this, the maximum punishment is more than 7 years. But no minimum punishment has been prescribed by the law. Maximum punishment is more than 7 years. But no minimum punishment has been prescribed by the law for this offense. This offense also becomes a non-heinous offense. So heinous offenses are basically, previously the idea was all those offenses for which the minimum punishment is more than 7 years. But initially, if all those offenses for which the punishment was more than 7 years, if these are heinous crimes, now the Supreme Court has clarified, if there is an offense for which the maximum punishment is more than 7 years, but no minimum punishment has been prescribed, even such an offense is a non-heinous offense, is not a heinous offense. Since it is related to current affairs, since this judgment has been given by the court, you have to look at this. So the point is, when it comes to the polity, you have to mix the static part and the dynamic part. How do you link the two? All these items, all these news articles which have appeared in the newspapers in the past 12 to 15 months, focus not only on current affairs, but focus on the static part related to that current affairs. Let me ask you one question. Can the governor pardon a death sentence? You might have read this in the newspapers. Now the governor can pardon a death sentence. The answer is no. The governor cannot pardon a death sentence. The governor can commute a death sentence. But what is the recent development on this matter? The recent development is, Supreme Court has said if an individual has committed a crime, for which death punishment was an option. Death punishment was an option, but death punishment was not given. Instead, life imprisonment was given. Previously, the situation was, if somebody has been sentenced to life imprisonment, then remission can take place. That means this sentence can be reduced. But the provision was, unless and until this individual has completed 14 years in jail, no remission can take place. What the Supreme Court has now clarified is that if an offense has been committed by somebody and you have been convicted for that crime, for which the maximum punishment was death, but death sentence was not given to you, life imprisonment was given to you. Now governor will have the power to pardon that individual for whom death sentence was an option but was not given. Now the governor can pardon that individual even without completing 14 years of mandatory punishment, mandatory imprisonment. That is why newspapers, and that is what newspapers misleadingly said, governor can pardon a death sentence. But governor cannot pardon a death sentence. Governor can pardon a convict who has committed a crime for which death sentence could have been given. But death sentence was not given. Life imprisonment was given. Previously, the scope was, unless and until you have completed 14 years of imprisonment, your sentence cannot be reduced. Now, even before completing 14 years of mandatory life imprisonment, even before that, your sentence, your punishment can be reduced. You can be pardoned by the governor. So pardoning powers of the governor, pardoning powers of the president, this has been in the news. Focus on this static portion. Similarly, for example, Article 21 of the Constitution. It talks about right to life and personal liberty. There are series of judgments on Article 21. There is Menaka Gandhi judgment, there is A.K. Gopalan judgment, there is ADM Jabalpur judgment, so many judgments. But that becomes subject matter of your mains examination. For the prelims examination, what is it that you need to know? You need to know that recently some changes were made. Some changes were made in the Advance Medical Directive or Living Will. Because the Supreme Court previously said right to living will is also a fundamental right under Article 21 of the Constitution. But then some rules were made by the Supreme Court, that the petition was filed in the court that these rules are difficult to implement. These are unimplementable. But now simplification of these rules have been made, has been done by the Supreme Court. So what are these rules under which Advanced Medical Directive takes place? Focus on those rules, that becomes relevant for your prelims examination. Long story short, what is the purpose of this session? The purpose is you have less than 90 days left for your prelims examination. Now for those who are appearing in this examination for the first time, you would want to know what should be our approach in the remaining less than 90 days. How should we prepare? What should be our revision plan? And for that, we have stage 1 of this Target Prelims 2023 course. Stage 1 will focus on these aspirants. We will tell you how to approach individual subjects, starting with Indian Polity. Approach this subject by focusing on the static portion related to the current affairs, which was in the news for the last 12 to 15 months. But sir, I have not been making notes for current affairs. I am not even reading the newspapers. Or I have started reading newspapers only recently, or I have completed newspapers of the past 6 months. How do I complete the current affairs of the past 12 months or 15 months? Don't worry. What is the solution? Take a look at the monthly current affairs magazines. Download them, underline them, revise them multiple times, and you don't have to go back to these newspapers and read them again and again. Don't do that, it's a waste of time. Alternatively, what you can do, you can come on our platform on the BYJU'S Exam Prep app, take a look at these sessions, attend these sessions where we will complete 400 plus topics, current affairs topics which were in the news in the past 12 to 15 months, individual subject wise, polity based, IR based, economics based, environment and ecology, science and technology based. So please attend these sessions. It's free initiative. You don't have to pay anything, but please attend so that you are prepared for your prelims examination. That is the strategy. Now, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask as many questions as possible, because I told you this initial phase, phase 1, we will split it into 2 parts. Initial 20 to 25 minutes, I'll give you a broad overview of how to approach. But then I will take up your questions. I would want to know what are your doubts, what are your queries, what are your confusions, and I will try my best, to the best of my ability, I will resolve your doubts. Let me know one by one, please. Which are the most important articles in the Constitution that we should study in detail for the prelims? There have been questions asked in the prelims examination previously. For example, right against exploitation or untouchability has been abolished under which of the following categories? Right to equality, right to freedom, right against exploitation, right to religious freedom. So you should know that untouchability, which is under Article 17 of the Constitution, which says untouchability is abolished and its practice in all its forms has been forbidden. That comes under right to equality. And for that, please focus on Lakshmikant. Lakshmikant for your static portion. Is Lakshmikant sufficient? Yes, it should be sufficient, because look at the trends over the past many years. Mostly the questions are asked from Lakshmikant. But listen to me carefully. If you have been reading NCERTs as well, and you have underlined the important areas in NCERTs, please go back to these NCERTs, revise them again, have a glance over these chapters in NCERTs, because some questions are directly asked from NCERTs as well. If you have read NCERTs, if you haven't, then you can focus on M. Lakshmikant. M. Lakshmikant plus Current Affairs magazine, you are good to go for the prelims examination. Don't worry much. Are all the Supreme Court judgments important for us? How should we choose which ones are relevant for the UPSC exam? All those judgments which are part of your syllabus becomes relevant for your examination. For example, the recent judgment on EWS reservation, that EWS reservation is constitutional. Now, you may not be asked about EWS reservation, but what you may be asked about is 9th schedule of the Constitution. Previously, a question was asked. 9th schedule was added to the Constitution during the Prime Ministership of Mr. Nehru, Indira Gandhi, Morarji Desai, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, so on and so forth. So you should know that 9th schedule was added by the first Constitutional Amendment Act. The year was 1951, when Pandit Nehru was the Prime Minister. And previously, any law which is placed in 9th schedule before 24th April 1973, there shall be no judicial review. But all laws passed and added to 9th schedule of the Constitution after 24th April 1973, there can be judicial review. Because it was on this date that a landmark Keshavananda Bharati judgment was given by the Supreme Court, where the Supreme Court propounded this doctrine of basic structure. But staying with basic structure, listen to me carefully now. Staying with this basic structure, there is a clash between the executive and the judiciary on judicial appointments. And there is a clash also on this doctrine of basic structure. You know that if you have been reading the news, you have an idea what I'm talking about. What sort of question can be asked? Maybe match the following. What is match the following? 99th Constitutional Amendment Act deals with NJAC, which was struck down by the court in 2015, and now it is the cause of controversy between the executive and the judiciary. 100th Constitutional Amendment Act is related to India-Bangladesh land boundary agreement. 101st Constitutional Amendment Act deals with the introduction of the Goods and Services Tax. 102nd Constitutional Amendment Act provided constitutional status to the National Commission of the Backward Classes. 103rd Constitutional Amendment Act provided EWS reservation for economically weaker sections of the society. 104th Constitutional Amendment Act provided an extension to reservation for SCs and STs in the Legislative Assembly and in the Lok Sabha. 105th Constitutional Amendment Act reinforced, gave the power back to the states that you can also add your own list, your own groups into the OBC list. Those who are part of socially and educationally backward classes of citizens, UTs as well as states, now were given the power under 105th Constitutional Amendment Act that you can have your own list where you will add your socially and educationally backward classes of citizens. So if NJAC is in the news, which was added because of 99th Constitutional Amendment Act, then match the following types question can be asked. So you should know what are the recent constitutional amendments which have taken place, 99 to 105. That becomes relevant for your examination. Along with polity, Lakshmikant, what should I read? If you can only focus on Lakshmikant and the Current Affairs magazine, you should be good to go. Just focus on these two areas. Any important topics in polity? Yes, lots and lots of important topics. We'll discuss 50 important current affairs topics which were in the news in the past 12 to 15 months. That is why I'm telling you, come on the BYJU'S Exam Prep app beginning 9th March and we will discuss all the current affairs topics subject-wise. Sir, I have not completed my syllabus till now. What should I do now? Complete the syllabus now. But focus on those areas now which are only relevant for the prelims. You can skip optional preparation, ethics, integrity and aptitude, world history, these areas which are predominantly relevant for your mains examination. So you can skip those areas which are relevant for the mains exam and focus only on those areas which are relevant for the prelims exam. And then it depends upon the amount of time that is in your hand, that is at your disposal. Create a timetable, stick to that timetable and equally allocate time for the subjects which are left now. Sir, how to revise polity? It is difficult to revise. Nothing is difficult. The moment you say it is difficult, you are making things even more difficult for you. If every single aspirant, a serious aspirant who is preparing for this exam, has revised polity multiple times, why can't you do it? But what you have to do, just the way I gave you the example regarding the office of governor. So governor is a big subject, but we revised in it less than 5 minutes. That's what you should do. That's how you should revise. That is why, my dear, I gave you these examples to tell you how you should revise. For example, there is chapter called Union and its Territory. Clear? Union and its Territory. How do you revise this? Article 1 says India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states. Clear? But what is this union of states? It basically means we are a federal polity. Why union of states is mentioned if we are a federal polity? For that, Dr. Ambedkar gave an answer. That I've used the phrase union of states for 2 reasons. Because India is not the result of an agreement between states. And no state has the right to secede, to come out of the Union of India. But then how can the states be reorganized? That can be the question in your prelims examination. And how do you revise it? Listen to me carefully. This is a bill. This bill should be passed by the parliament. This is a bill under Article 3, which talks about reorganization of a state. This bill under Article 3 requires prior approval of the President of India. But before President can give his approval, President has to refer this bill to the Legislative Assembly of that state, which is going to be affected by this bill, seeking views from that state. Once the views are sought, then the President, because these views are not binding on the President, then the President will ask the government, you can introduce this bill in the parliament. Then this bill can be introduced in either Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha. If it is introduced in Rajya Sabha, it needs to be passed by simple majority. Then it is sent to Lok Sabha, it should be passed by simple majority. And then once this bill is passed, it will be sent to President for signature. And this bill under Article 3, if it makes changes to Schedule 1 and Schedule 4 of the Constitution, it will not be deemed as amendment to the Constitution. Why? Because an exception has been provided under Article 4, which primarily means that a bill calling for the reorganization of the state should be passed by special majority. This can be the statement in your prelims exam. But you should know that this bill requires simple majority, not special majority. For example, previous year's question paper, what sort of question was asked? That a bill which is pending at the joint session, which is to be discussed in the joint session, requires what type of majority? That question was asked in the prelims exam. Similarly, a bill calling for the reorganization of the state requires simple majority. You should know this. Also, relate it with current affairs. What is current affairs relevance here? Belagavi, which is in Karnataka right now. On Belagavi, there is a dispute. Maharashtra says Belagavi should be with us. Karnataka says no, Belagavi is with us. In fact, there are some districts, Kolhapur, Sholapur, those districts which are currently in Maharashtra should be part of Karnataka. That's the dispute. But for that, you need to understand and you need to focus on zonal council. Zonal council becomes relevant for your prelims exam. Why? Because in 1956, when the states were reorganized in India, when 14 states and 6 union territories were created, one ground on the basis of which the states were reorganized was linguistic ground. On the grounds of language, the states were reorganized in India. And the States Reorganization Act also created zonal councils. So zonal councils are statutory bodies. That means bodies created by the law passed by the parliament. These are not the bodies mentioned in the constitution. So zonal council, if you have to study, these zonal councils, initially 5 zonal councils, were created under the States Reorganization Act. Northern, Southern, Eastern, Western and Central Zonal Council. Then in 1972, a 6th zonal council was created. But that 6th zonal council, Northeastern Council, was not created under the States Reorganization Act of 1956. It was created under the Northeastern Council Act of 1972. So right now we have 6 zonal councils, but 5 were created under the Act of 1956. 1 was created under the Act of 1972. Who is the chairperson of zonal council? Union Minister of Home Affairs. Who is the vice chairman of the zonal council? Chief Minister by rotation. These are the facts that you have to keep in mind. And states reorganization said any dispute, any boundary dispute between 2 or more states can be inquired into, can be looked into by these zonal councils. That is how in 1966, when the matter went to the zonal council, when Maharashtra took up this matter that Belagavi should be part of Maharashtra, a commission was set up, Meher Chand Commission, headed by the 3rd Chief Justice of India, Meher Chand Mahajan, which basically in its recommendation said Belagavi should stay with Karnataka. That becomes relevant for your prelims examination. But now Maharashtra has approached the court, and Maharashtra has approached the court under Article 131 of the Constitution. Read what is Article 31. Article 131 talks about original jurisdiction of the court. In a sense, all those cases, all those federal cases involving the disputes between the center and the state, involving disputes between 2 or more states and other states, those disputes can be filed only in the Supreme Court under Article 131. That becomes relevant for your examination. And that is how you will have to link your static part with the current affairs part. Sir, how can a governor decide himself or herself what all comes under his discretion? Also in Lakshmikant, there is a mention of couple of areas of discretion. Please explain this. Governor has a discretion. For example, in the recommending president's rule in a state, the governor acts in his discretion. In reserving bills for the consideration of the president, the governor acts in his discretion. You might be asked about that there is one mandatory provision where it is mandatory for the governor to reserve a bill for the consideration of the president. And what is that mandatory thing? If the state legislature enacts a bill, and through this bill, it removes the powers of the High Court, it snatches the power of the High Court, it reduces the jurisdiction of the High Court, such a bill, when it is presented to the governor, it is mandatory on part of the governor to reserve this bill for the consideration of the president. That becomes relevant for your examination. Because what does Constitution say? There shall be Council of Ministers with Chief Minister at its head to aid and advise the governor, who shall act on that advice, except when the governor has to act in his discretion. But Constitution does not explain what are these discretionary areas. The Constitution says the governor gets to decide what are the discretionary powers. And that is why when the discretionary powers are not defined, matter goes to the court. Sir, please let us know what not to focus on polity for prelims examination. What you should not focus on is getting into the analysis of various Supreme Court judgments or analysis of various constitutional provisions, such as should there be office of governor or not. Forget about this, that is relevant for your mains examination. Critically examine the EWS reservation of the Supreme Court. Forget about this, that's relevant for the mains examination. Should states be reorganized on linguistic grounds? Forget about this, that's relevant for the mains examination. So analysis part, the critical analysis part of these constitutional provisions, skip, just focus on facts and concepts. Sir, please suggest about parliamentary committees. Are they relevant for prelims? Relevant for prelims, because we have seen in the past a question on public accounts committee was asked. A question on estimates committee was asked. This question can be asked. And glad you asked this question, because this year we might expect a question on parliamentary committee on subordinate legislation. Why? Citizenship Amendment Act was passed in 2019. But to implement this act, the government will have to make rules. These rules have not been made. Why? Because the government cites that there was COVID-19 pandemic. That's why we could not come up with these rules. The law says, if a law has been passed, assented to by the president, then within 6 months, listen to me carefully, within 6 months, the rules should be made to implement this law. If the government is unable to make these rules within 6 months of the presidential assent, then the government will have to seek extension from this Parliamentary Committee on Subordinate Legislation. And 7 times Parliamentary Committee on Subordinate Legislation has given extension to the Ministry of Home Affairs to make rules to implement Citizenship Amendment Act. So this Parliamentary Committee on Subordinate Legislation, does it exist only in Lok Sabha as well as or also in Rajya Sabha? That's what you need to understand. What is the composition of this Committee on Subordinate Legislation? Who is the chairperson of this Parliamentary Committee on Subordinate Legislation? That becomes relevant for your exam. How much depth do we need to go? For example, National Human Rights Commission, whether it is working well or not, whether it is in a position to uphold human rights or not, that is the analysis of NHRC. That can be relevant for your mains examination. But what is the composition of NHRC? Who appoints the members? What is the term of these members? That becomes relevant for your examination. For example, we saw a couple of years ago, there was a change as well. Change in the sense, previously the chairperson of the National Human Rights Commission should have been the ex-Chief Justice of India. Then changes were made. Now the National Human Rights Commission chairperson can be ex-Chief Justice of India or ex-judge of the Supreme Court. So even an ex-judge of the Supreme Court can be appointed by the President as the chairperson of National Human Rights Commission. And that is how ex-Supreme Court Judge Justice Arun Mishra, who was not the Chief Justice of India, but is the chairperson of National Human Rights Commission. This much information, if you have, is more than sufficient for your examination. Sir, even after completing the topic, we could not solve the questions. When you attempt a mock question or a mock test series, if you are able to answer a question, which means your preparation is on the right track. If you're unable to mark the question, then think why you were unable to mark the question. Reasons can be multiple. Reason number one can be you have not prepared that topic. You have not read this topic, that's why you are unable to answer. Or you have read this topic, but you could make out of the 4 statements whether 2 statements are correct or not, but the remaining 2 you have completely no idea about, which means you have not read that topic completely. Third, if you are still unable to answer this question, now you will realize that I have read this question, I have read this topic, but because of lack of revision, I was unable to answer this question. So conduct the analysis yourself. Why are you not able to answer this question? Is it that you have not prepared this topic? Or is it that you have not prepared this topic in depth according to the requirements of this exam? Or is it that you have prepared this topic but you're unable to answer because of the lack of revision? Then focus on those weak areas. How many tests should we appear in? The more, the better. Solve as many questions as possible. That will give you confidence. There is no upper limit. Sir, should we cover newspaper at this juncture or should we skip it for now? And if skipped, how would we cover these 2 months later on? Don't skip newspapers. The newspapers you can skip only in May, in the first week of the May or second week of the May. Don't skip newspapers now because these topics which are in the news now, in March, in April, significant questions can be asked from these 2 months' current affairs. Should we continue answer writing practice and optional subject till prelims? Now, I don't know who you are. If you are somebody who has already appeared in this exam before, who has cleared the prelims examination before, I would get a sense that you are well prepared for the prelims exam, which means for the month of March, you can continue your optional preparation, your answer writing session. But if you're a complete beginner, if this is your first attempt, now these 3 months, you should entirely focus on the prelims examination. Forget about answer writing. That's what I said right at the start. Now, if you have to focus on the prelims exam, forget about all the agony that you have, all the problems that you have. Forget about mains examination. Forget about your optional. Just focus on the prelims examination. Have complete focus and attention on the prelims. Once prelims is over, then we will discuss what should be the preparation strategy for the mains exam. Are previous year's questions important? We have seen in polity, for example, on parliamentary democracy, on directive principles of state policy, the questions have been repeated by the UPSC. But previous year's question papers, you should look at ideally when you have completed a significant portion of the syllabus, so that you can see what sort of questions are asked in the prelims examination. Right now, you should not focus on the previous year's question papers, although we will discuss previous year's question papers in this phase as well. We will look at the previous year's question papers. But you should focus on what will be asked. You should anticipate what will be asked in the examination by linking the static and the dynamic portion. That is what your focus should be on. Sir, which is the best NCERT text for polity? Class 11th, Indian Constitution at Work, Political Theory. These 2 books are sufficient for your polity. For working professionals, how can we plan the subject timing schedule, sir? Depends on what is your work timing. If you can allocate 2 hours before your work in the morning, 1 hour during your work for your current affairs preparation, and 3 to 4 hours after your work, then it is sufficient for your prelims examination. So you can divide it in such a manner that during the day, 1 hour during the day, during your lunch break, you can focus on current affairs. Revise the current affairs magazine during the day. Morning, pick those subjects where you are weak at and focus on those subjects, because early morning, your attention span is better. In the evening, focus on those areas where you are strong. So even if you're tired after the day, but if you're reading and revising those subjects, for example, modern history is your favorite subject. If you revise modern history after your hectic schedule, work schedule, you will not feel bored. At least you are completing the syllabus. That should be your approach. Are BYJU'S notes enough with BYJU'S classes? Please rephrase your question, please. Sir, do we need to learn subclauses of every article? No. Sir, is it possible to complete the static portion of the polity when less than 90 days are left? 100% yes. How do I remember articles? You don't have to remember articles, my dear. You don't have to do that. Don't focus your energy in memorizing articles. That will not be asked in your examination. Yes, there have been instances where article numbers have been asked, but those are mostly those articles which are almost always in the news. For example, Article 17 was in the news. That's why this question was asked. Article 21 was in the news. For example, the question was, right to marry comes under which of the following fundamental rights? Article 21. Since there was a judgment, Hadia judgment in that particular year, that's why this question was asked. And that is why I repeatedly emphasize on linking the static and the current affairs portion. Will you be providing previous year's question papers analysis? Yes, we will do that as well. Sir, past 365 days is enough for current affairs? This is where students, when you prepare for this exam for the first time, we get these questions from the students. Sir, your class notes, Lakshmikant, DD Basu, and 2 national newspapers. Is that enough? I would say yes, that is enough. After a few months, sir, only your notes and Lakshmikant and 1 newspaper. Is that enough? I said yes, enough. After a few months, sir, only your notes and current affairs monthly magazine. Is that enough? Yes, that is enough. Last 365 days current affairs. Would that be sufficient? Hopefully yes. But UPSC, my dear, it stands for Unpredictable Service Commission. So there are times when focus of UPSC is on current affairs. There are times when the focus of UPSC is on the static portion. There are times when the focus of UPSC is on medieval India. There are times when the focus of UPSC is on modern India. So you never can prejudge what UPSC is going to do. We can only hope, since you can't cover 2-3 years current affairs, at least previous 365 days, or to be on the safer side, 12 to 15 months current affairs should be more than enough. We have 6 more minutes to go. Whatever questions you have, shoot them fast. What chapters are important in Lakshmikant and what should we skip? You can skip chapters such as foreign policy. You can skip chapters like interpretation of the Constitution. You can skip those chapters which are not relevant for the prelims. Just focus on the conceptual part. For example, you have these statutory bodies, you have constitutional bodies. Just focus on their composition, their role, who is the chairperson, how the members are appointed or elected or nominated, and be done with that. Does President has the pardoning power on death sentence? Yes. President has the power to pardon a death sentence under Article 72 of the Constitution. But that is not the discretion of the president. That is on the advice of the government. That is on the advice of the Home Minister. So do we need to study all the bills, whether passed or pending? You don't have to. Ideally, you should not be focusing on the bills which are pending in the parliament. Forget about that. Focus on the acts which have been passed recently. Sir, is it possible to crack prelims in 90 days if you have to start from scratch? I know a student who joined us, I think it was 2016, less than 2.5 months before the prelims exam. I will not tell you what was the All India rank, but it was under 20. Anything is possible, provided you have the right guidance and dedication and commitment and fire within you to qualify this exam. Anything is possible. How to avoid negative marking is a very important question. Listen to me carefully. When you are attempting the questions, the trend is, some students, what they do, they will first read the entire question paper and then mark answers on the question paper without marking the answers on the OMR sheet. Then once the last 30 minutes are left, they will start marking the OMR sheet. Don't do that. Don't do that, please. I request, urge you, beseech you, don't do that, because this is where you will make mistakes. First round of questions, when you read a question, if you are able to answer it correctly, if you're 100% sure as to what is the answer to this question, immediately mark it on the OMR sheet. So in your first round, you should focus on those questions where you are absolutely sure what is the right answer. Then you should focus on those questions where you are 50-50% sure whether you are right, whether this statement is right or wrong. Then focus on those areas. If in these two rounds you are fairly close to the cutoff, in the sense you have answered 70 to 80 questions, then skip the remaining 20. You should not aim for maximum score. Don't aim 200, don't aim 180, don't aim 170. Your aim should be in the range of 110 to 115. For that, in your first two rounds, if you're able to cross this number, you are in. Focus on your mains examination. Because if you start attempting even those questions which are very difficult, which you have no idea about, then you are increasing the chances of losing marks, because negative marking kicks in. Similarly, if you have answered all the questions on the question paper, now you are marking on the OMR sheet, what will happen? You know the answer to question number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But question number 6, 7, 8, you are skipping. And then you are marking question number 9. When you are marking this on your OMR sheet, but you are also in a hurry because you don't know how much time is left, or even if you know, you are hesitant, you are nervous now, will I be able to completely mark the answers? You will mark question 1, question 2, question 3, question 4, but you don't have to mark question 7. Instead of marking question 9, you will mark it against question 7. And you will not be given another OMR sheet. So basically, you are ruining your chances, you are ruining your OMR sheet. The moment you are clear that this is the right answer to this question, mark it on the OMR sheet. Please don't delay it. Demonetization judgment has been given by the Supreme Court. Is it relevant for polity or economics? The question will not be asked on specifically on the demonetization judgment. The question can be asked on the related thing. For example, the status of right to property. That's why this question was asked previously when demonetization judgment was pending. What is the status of right to property in India? So demonetization judgment specifically would not be relevant for the exam. That's about it. Thank you so much for staying with us for 1 hour. Hope to see you soon again. Tomorrow we will have another strategy session focusing on current affairs. Then beginning 9th March, join us on the BYJU'S Exam Prep app, where we will discuss 400 plus current affairs topics which are relevant for your exam, which have been in the news for the past 12 to 15 months. And then we will come back on our YouTube channel and discuss and practice lots and lots of MCQs for your prelims examination. And please don't forget to take the last 4 All India Prelims Test Series. 4 tests are free for you. Please attempt so that you know where exactly do you stand in this examination, because after all, it is a competitive examination. And if you like the session, if this session has been of some help to you, don't forget to press the like button, drop in your comments, subscribe to our channel if you haven't yet, and share the links of these classes with your friends and fellow aspirants. Or if you don't want them to succeed, then don't share. See you. Bye-bye. All the best. Stay positive. Nothing is impossible. Good night. Bye-bye.